Welcome to Face2Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face2Face.
So my next interview was another Toronto International Film Festival treat. It was with Dekel Berenson and his new film, Anna. It's a short and premiered at the Cannes Film Festival this year. And Dekel and I had I hope he agreed, but we had an incredible talk and just fascinating. And, you know, for such a short film, it was remarkable how much conversation we had before the record button was hit and after we finished recording. He has a master's degree in international relations, and it certainly comes out, and you can see it in his filmmaking. Another film, Ashmina, that you're also going to want to see. We talk about 67 ideas for short films that Dekel had, and it's fascinating to talk about his creativity and how he thinks. And this film, Anna, it touches on some pretty difficult subjects, frankly. There's so much going on. This is a beautiful film. The performances are stunning. He talks a lot about filmmaking being a ton of hard work and a little bit of luck. And he asked the question, why would anybody want to make a film that's just entertaining? This is about being critical and asking good questions. It's an allegory with a message. This is about mail order brides, or love tours, as they're sometimes often called, but also a film about Anna, that is, it's about being political in the big sense, I suppose, and it's a critique of the system, I would say, and I think he would probably agree with that. But yeah, a live action short. It's a story about a single mom living in Ukraine, looking for love. So fascinating interview, fascinating film. You're going to want to find it online. Anna is the name. Dekel Berenson is the interview that we were about to step into. DavidPeckLive.com for more information about my writing and my public speaking. You can purchase a copy of Real Change is Incremental there online. And you can also get behind the work that I do here at Face2Face. We're coming up on 500 interviews sometime in 2020. If you want to support us financially, please do. You can do that through Patreon. $1, $5, $10 a month would be certainly appreciated. It's amazing what a little bit can do. It goes a long way to offset some of the costs to keep this podcast live. And we are now listened to in over 20 countries and thousands of downloads and listens, and you can take part in that too. And if you want to advertise on Face2Face, please reach out to us, and you can do that through email on the site face2facelive.ca. We've got newsletters and potential for banner ads and shout outs and so on. So please do reach out to us. We are we're breaking some new ground with the advertising. And by the way, if you can't support us on Patreon, please leave us a review on iTunes. We really, really would appreciate that. Amazing what a little digital noise can do to increase your presence online. And it builds awareness. So forward this podcast along, sign up for our newsletter and so on. And please help us get word on the street. And also Rabble.ca is a platform where Face2Face exists. Lots of other writers and thinkers there, and bloggers and podcasters you're going to want to look into. That's Rabble.ca, news for the rest of us. Coming right up, talking with Dekel Berenson and his new film, Anna. Well, welcome to Face2Face. We're joined by a very special guest here with us today in our makeshift studio. I just finished interviewing Barbara Koppel here, coming up on my second last interview here at the festival, the Toronto International Film Festival. Dekel Berenson's here with us today to talk about his new film, Anna. Dekel, thank you for joining me today.
Sure, thank you for having me.
We are direct live from Toronto, and we're sitting in the business center. This is how filmmakers have to do it sometimes, right? Working on low budgets, but it's kind of like a studio, isn't it? Mm-hmm. As long as we don't get interrupted. So congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
Powerful film, short film. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the decisions you made behind why you chose to do a short and not a full length feature? Was that a budget concern, and then I'd love to talk about some of the issues that your film raises.
So first of all, I'm a filmmaker for 3.5 years only. So I have a master's in international relations and European studies from the Central European University in Budapest. I'm Israeli, but I left Israel in 2000, straight after the military service. So in Israel, we go to the military for 3 years, from 18 to 21. Then most people leave for a year to travel around the world, and then they go back to Israel, and they go to study law or medicine or something like that.
Right.
I just never went back to Israel. I just kept traveling. So I traveled for a year, and then I ended up in Budapest, met somebody, stayed there, did the master's in international relations, and moved to London and moved to New York. It's a very, very long story. But throughout all the years, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to experience different things, do different things. I didn't think it was right to just go straight to study filmmaking before,
Oh, interesting. I was going to say, why international relations before filmmaking?
I really feel I just doesn't feel right to. I mean, a lot of people, they come out of film school and, if it's in the States or some other place where you don't have to go to the military, you go out of film school when you're 22, 23, you haven't really done anything in life.
Haven't experienced anything.
Yeah, that's why sometimes you go to a film festival, you see student films, and they're all about the same relationships and sex and stuff that interests young people.
Yeah,
not about anything, a little bit more deeper than that, or more interesting or more original. So anyway, it never made sense to me to go to study film early. But on the other hand, I did go into film later than I wanted to or should have. And it's just like a long, personal story that maybe is less interesting. But so I became a filmmaker 3 years ago, and in the beginning I did 3 months in the London Film School, and then left again because I felt that I'm already too old to experience, and film school was a bit of a waste of time for me. And also, tuition is expensive in the London Film School, in any film school.
I bet.
And I realized that I can just take that money and go and shoot my own film or two or three.
Fund my next few films.
Because also in the film school itself, they also don't give you the camera, and they don't give you... So even if you go to the school and you finish the 2 years, you still have to go and find money and find equipment. And it just didn't make any sense to me. So I left the school and made my first short film, and you can't make straight a feature, just first of all because you don't have experience, and also nobody will give you money to do that. Right. So you go and you first make your first short, and then I sent it to festivals, and it was accepted in many festivals, but all of them very, very small. I mean, the biggest was maybe
still
the Bahamas.
Pretty affirming, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was not bad, but the Bahamas Film Festival, and maybe a few like Florida, and I don't even remember the Twin Cities Film Festival, stuff like that. But then my second film, so the first one I shot it in the UK, and that was expensive. It's expensive to do anything in the UK. And then for my second film, I told myself, why don't I go and shoot it in a country where will be more it will be cheaper to shoot there and more interesting.
Sure. Yep.
So I came up with this idea and then at the same time I came up with this idea, and that's something throughout my life I do it. I'm thinking, okay, if I'm making a short film and I'm going to send it to festivals, what if this will also not get into any big festival?
Right.
So it's better if I do a short film that I can then make another one and connect the two together. So then I came up with this plan to make 5 short films around the world, each around a similar theme.
Okay.
So I will have the possibility to connect them into a feature in case none of them gets into a big festival.
5 short 15 or 20 minute films. All of a sudden you have 100.
Yes, suddenly you have a feature. Right?
Nice.
So then I went to Nepal and I made my second film, Ashmina, which tells the story of a 13-year-old girl who packs paragliders for foreign pilots who fly in Nepal as paragliders. So they land in the landing field, and then these children run to them and offer them to pack their paragliders for small change. And that's the story of Ashmina. And that's actually based on a personal experience.
Sure.
I've been to Nepal 6-7 years ago, and I met these children, and I told myself, when I'm finally a filmmaker, I will come here and make a film about
tell this story.
Yeah.
That's
So then,
cool. Well, it's amazing that you did it.
Yeah.
That you
it's
actually
crazy.
followed through. How many people
Yeah.
actually probably say that
Well,
and don't do it?
no, not many.
Yeah.
So-
Question two, not to
Yeah.
break up your story, why didn't you shoot it on a handheld at the time?
Oh no, it's just
just the tech-
stylistically. You mean when I flew
Yeah,
there?
when you
No,
were there,
I
you
wasn't.
know.
I wasn't then a filmmaker
You weren't
yet.
a filmmaker
I wasn't.
yet. Yeah. Got it.
So I went to Nepal, and before I went to Nepal, I have this very strange personality. Like whenever I get like rejected or fail in something, instead of making me like think about quitting, it just makes me much more stronger.
That's
So
funny.
something happened to me after my first film. I wrote a treatment and I sent it to some producer and he didn't like it. I was like so upset. And I went and I just wrote on a piece of paper 67 ideas for short films.
67.
67, yes,
That's
just
cool.
in a few hours. Each of them just 2 lines. And one of them was Ashmina and one of them was Anna, the short film that is screened here. And I wrote both scripts for Ashmina and Anna. And then I just decided, okay, I'll go first to Nepal, shoot Ashmina. And then as soon as I finished Ashmina, I had 2 weeks rest in London, flew to Ukraine,
Wow.
looked for locations. It was March of last year. I was there with my producers, and in March it's snowy. So
It looked
was
cold.
very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But we realized if we're starting to make the film now, by the time we finish, by the time we make it, it's spring. So we will not have this snow. So we decided to postpone the film to the making of the film. And we started working on it only in October. And finished the film in March 1st.
How many days of shooting?
6 days of shooting.
6 days. Wow.
6 days, yeah.
That's amazing.
And then we finished editing on the 1st of March, which was the deadline for Cannes. Send the film. Everybody was thought, because I was pushing everybody to finish quickly.
Sure. Yeah. That was your
we didn't have any break day between shooting and editing. We just went. It was a weekend even. We shot on a Friday. On Saturday we started editing. And I was like, yeah, there is a deadline for Cannes. We have to submit it to Cannes. And I was like, yeah, this guy's crazy. I mean, that's a chance that we will get it.
What are the odds?
Yeah, the odds are actually 0.2 if you calculate it.
That's right.
Because there's 4,400 films and they accept between 8 and 10.
Wow.
So they all thought I was nuts. And then we submitted the film. And a few weeks later...
It's amazing.
Yeah. That's the short version.
That's the short version.
That's
I'm sure there's a
short.
long version that would require some chilled vodka. And if we smoke cigars, maybe some cigars and sitting on a balcony overlooking the ocean in Cannes, maybe.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations. And very well received in Cannes as well. And now the North American premiere here at the Toronto International Film Festival.
Which I'm super, super happy for and grateful. And the audience here is absolutely
I was just
amazing.
going to say, they usually are. I've only been to 2 Q&As this year. Most of the films I see are screeners, unfortunately, because I'm most of the time doing interviews for Face2Face. But the Q&As usually are really good here in Toronto. Audiences are very appreciative for the most part. And even of films that you might think, don't deserve it, still, they're appreciative of the fact that people have spent the time and the effort, the passionate commitment it takes to, you're listening to your story. How much passion, commitment, intention. I love that you say 67 short ideas. That's the title of a book. That's awesome. That's every filmmaker should have to go through that experience, right? To sit down and there's a tenacity to that I love.
Yeah, because it's the competition is so so difficult.
It's got to be a crazy
somebody
business.
who doesn't give 100% of himself. I don't know how he can.
So can you talk to me a little bit maybe about Anna and the story? It's a beautiful film. It's deeply unsettling actually on many levels and quite tragic in a variety of ways, but still very beautiful. You went to Ukraine. You knew that you were going to make this film in the Ukraine?
Yeah.
Based on an experience of some kind, right?
I was traveling in Ukraine in 2012, so I knew the country, and my grandmother was actually born in Ukraine.
Right, I read
but
that.
It's not really the reason. I mean, it's just known. I mean, I knew about, there's all the mail ordering brides services and all this, international dating. I mean, it's something that is, it is known, And to
what
me,
what are these called again in Anna? Love tours.
Yeah,
They're
the
love tours.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So they really exist. They exist from the beginning of, as soon as the Iron Curtain fell, people will be like, oh, let's organize these tours where you take buses full of American men or foreigners, and they travel in East Europe and do these parties. I mean, every person in Ukraine knows about these parties.
Mm-hmm.
So Svetlana, who plays Anna, she was in a party like this 20 years ago as a participant,
yes.
right? And we auditioned a girl for the role of the translator in the film, and she was actually a translator in one of these parties. So she was auditioning for the role of something that she actually did in real life, but she wasn't a good actress, so she didn't get the role. But yeah, it was just funny. And after the film came out, also one of my best friends who is Ukrainian, she said, "Oh, I was also asked to be a translator on one of these parties." So these parties are well known in East Europe.
But by the way, the scene with the translator is hysterical.
Yes, thank you.
Deeply unsettling when you think of things like international foreign relations.
Mm-hmm.
What is lost in translation? What actually is missed? And I couldn't quite tell if she was just lazy and didn't really want to take the time to translate the Texan, or if she was actually doing it on purpose. It's so beautiful.
So she basically, first of all, her English is not that great.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And she has a lot of mistakes in her English.
Yep.
But it's
so does the Texan,
but
by the way.
But that's the mistakes of the actress, which I left.
You
like
left
when
that
she
in?
says,
Okay.
when she says, "Oh, she thinks it's very interested."
That's right.
Right.
Yes,
So I'm
yes.
like,
it's beautiful.
I'm not going to.
No,
fix
it's beautiful.
It.
It's beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So this is really how she speaks, right?
Right.
So the idea is that she's paid to translate, and she wants these people to get together.
Yeah.
So she kind of like tells each side what she thinks the person wants to hear, until the point that she understands that this guy is like a complete jerk and she should save.
Yeah. So she's a translator and a matchmaker.
Yeah.
And I loved the empathy she had for Anna, and I think it's best if you go get a drink and go to the washroom or something like that. Like basically just leave now while you still have a chance.
This guy you should get. So
how much by the way, I'm hoping everyone gets to see this film, but the Texan, fascinating too. It's sort of cliche but not, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And he really nails the performance. How much direction there, or did the guy just step into it?
Working a lot. We did a lot of rehearsals.
Yeah,
a lot of rehearsals. And he's a character himself.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. He sure looks like it. Yeah.
And he lives in Ukraine for many years, and it was also very difficult to find an actor who could play.
Sure.
I was like very lucky, with this with him. So a lot of the roles we did a lot of auditions.
Sure.
So it's such a combination of hard work and luck.
And it's
everything is super hard work.
Serendipity, yeah.
And in the same time, so sometimes I think, oh, I'm so lucky with him, with Eric, for example. On the other hand, I did do self-tapes. I had maybe 150 self-tapes of people from the UK. I put an ad in London. I thought I would have to bring somebody from London.
With you, okay.
Who could play an American with an accent, just for this role. Because, who knew that I could find an actor in Kiev who can play an American with a Texan accent. So I did my homework and hard work, and at the same time, I had luck because I found somebody who was absolutely perfect.
I love the hard work and the luck.
No, the hard work. I just can't tell you how much hard work. And also in Ukraine, I love the people who I work with, and I'm so happy for this experience. These times that I made these two films in Nepal and in Ukraine, in Kiev, best time of my life by far. I mean, this is just. I'm doing this for the fun of making the films.
Right.
Really, I mean, of course, after you come to a festival and people come to you and they love your films and they watch it, that's amazing. But I'm also like deeply enjoying the process.
Yeah, it's
good. But it's just like insane amount of work, and going against the system. Also, usually the people who you work with.
Sure.
So, so in Ukraine, for example, my producer, she was like, "Why are you doing so many rehearsals? Because in Ukraine we don't do rehearsals for short films." And I'm like,
interesting.
What? what? Like, okay.
Right, so
you know.
and Svetlana, she's theatrical actress, right? So she, I think I read that her background theatrical, so she would be familiar with.
No, we had to make a lot of rehearsals, a lot of
okay.
rehearsals,
Interesting.
and they were, they told me, they all thought I was crazy for working so hard for.
Isn't any good director a little bit crazy?
Well, first of all, yes, but I also don't think that I'm crazy. I mean, you go through all this effort.
Let me ask your friends about that at Dekel.
Yeah. No, I'm also crazy, but not because of that.
Right.
So, and I wanted to tell them. I mean, look, I'm an Israeli guy. I'm coming here to make a film, and I made Anna after Ashmina, so they already saw Ashmina and saw that it was beautiful.
Sure.
And it didn't have the success yet that it has already now, because since then it won prizes and is Oscar qualified, and it won the first prize in the Krakow Film Festival and first prize in the Jerusalem Film Festival. But even without that, they could see, and I wanted to tell them, guys, trust me, I know what I'm doing. If I want to do rehearsals, we should do rehearsals.
Right. And by the way, this is my movie. Yeah.
Yes, and by the way, yeah. So yeah, it's like a constant struggle and a creative effort. And
I'm fascinated by your background in international relations and how that's informing Ashmina and Anna and the future work that you're going to do. And this is an important, like, I've made the distinction, Dekel, over the years of, personally, that's a great film, that's an important film, and every now and then the two kind of meet. That's great and important. I mean, I think you've made a great, beautiful, important film that needs to be seen and needs to be discussed. And maybe as a filmmaker, you don't want or don't really care if people have a conversation about your film, maybe on a certain level, but there are some deep issues in this film that you're raising and some questions that need to be asked. From the opening, the numbers of the carcasses in the butcher shop right through. I mean, it's a constant theme throughout. It's the depersonalization and objectification of women and of humans in general, really, I suppose. Anyway, now I'm rambling. Do you go in with this idea that I'm going to make a film that's going to say something socially? Not really?
No, of course. I'm laughing because the answer is of course.
Yeah, of course.
Because if you're going to do all this effort,
why bother?
You need the reason. You need to make you need to make something which is important, because otherwise, I personally don't understand people who make films that are just entertaining. Right. So and I think great. and behind this whole project, so to connect it to what I was talking about before, absolutely. So Anna has all these themes, the objectification of women, and these tours that there is so much wrong in them. This idea that you take these quote unquote rich Americans, but really they're like in the US they're probably like blue collar totally. Yeah. And then but they go there, and for these Ukrainian women who lived in East Ukraine, it's some kind of like they live in terrible conditions, and they would want to move abroad, and each person brings something
this is about a dream. It's about a dream for something else, for something other, maybe in some cases.
Yes, and then in the case of Anna, she meets this guy, and it turns out that he's probably not much better than the drunk people that you see in the first scene, right? And as I said, in Ashmina, there's different themes. Ashmina is about child labor and about the effects of mass tourism on third world countries, and so all these themes are important for me, and I guess that obviously my background in international relations affect me in the stories that I want to tell, and what attracts me.
There's got to be a fine balance too between making a beautiful piece of art and making something that's and a doc film, I suppose. Not that they're beautiful pieces of art, but what I mean is that it's not, what's the word I'm looking for?
Didactic?
Unctuous.
Yeah.
That, oh, wow, Dekel's really preaching to me here now. He's hitting me over the head. He's not, it's the big musical score that comes in to make me feel emotional. And
no music.
Right?
Absolutely no music.
Yeah. So
people come to me always... composers come to me and it's like, I want to give you your card if you need music for your film. I was like, no, there's not going to be music in your film. Right. And they ask me why, and I'm like, because it's easy and it's manipulative, and I don't like that kind of filmmaking. And yeah, I first of all thank you, for saying all that, and I agree 100%. It's a very fine balance between telling a story, which is on the surface just a story,
Right.
but in the same time it's meaningful and political, and also allegorical and
It is,
visual. As you noted in Anna, from the first shot, you see these carcasses of meat, and maybe in the first moment you don't,
Not quite sure where we're going.
Yeah, it's just meat. It's just a meat factory. But then in the end, you're thinking, oh, that scene, actually, that shot, it's very visual. It's similar visually to the scene where the women sit on the sofa. So you're supposed to make that connection, which,
Name tags, numbers.
yeah. And it's
Well, I wondered, Dekel, for a brief moment, I wondered if I'd stepped into a horror film briefly with the
first scene.
carcasses.
Yeah.
And in a way, there is almost kind of a relational horror to what plays out.
Yeah.
Right? It's not horror in the traditional sense of the word, but
Yeah.
the separation of it, right? And that sort of deep cynicism to it is a bit horrific, troubling.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's always a challenge, and a challenge also to keep that meanings and layers of meanings, to tell that visually.
How much of it's written in for you at this point in your career, and how much do you sort of discover along the way?
So really, I'd say 80% is written, probably.
Yep.
So in the very first draft of the film, she was just working in a butcher shop and cutting meat. So you just see her cutting meat, but then the idea came of, maybe you can just go to a real meat factory and
Right.
show these big carcasses hanging. So you take it, one level further, but everything, all the different meanings are written in the beginning. But then while you work with actors, while you find locations,
Sure. Yeah.
then you continue to develop it. So you come to a location and suddenly. So for example, I'm working now on another film, and there's a theme there of people left behind and living in the wrong period of time and changing times.
Sure.
And then this idea suddenly came of to show the landscape, and a beautiful landscape, but then you shift the camera and then suddenly you see these electric wind turbines, right? And that's some kind of a visual symbol for change and for for this theme, right? So sometimes you come to a location and you see something and it inspires you, or
I do love the collaborative nature of filmmaking. I do love those moments of discovery and how they end up helping to push that allegory or that parable or that story along. I love Anna. I love
thank
Anna.
you so much.
I love her too. Like, I love the film, but I love her.
Yeah.
And right out of the gate, my heart went out to this woman, and you, she's so alone. She's so alone, and yet she still has enough sensitivity and care and empathy that she's willing to feed the dogs on the way. I mean, this is lovely, beautiful stuff. I mean, so some dark themes in a way, and yet, would you say you're a hopeful filmmaker in the sense that you are pushing back against where it seems maybe we're heading in some respects?
Yeah, but personally, I'm not hopeful at all. Unfortunately, that's why I'm making.
But you're laughing and you're
I'm
smiling,
making
though.
these films quickly because I think it's all going to end fairly quickly.
We're done for soon, are we?
Well,
In
I
some
think
respects?
so. Yeah, I mean, in Israel, there's elections in 2 days, and we have a prime minister who's absolutely lost it completely. I mean, there's an ombudsman position in Israel, and they just replaced him, and they selected somebody who is just like he's just a yes man for the prime minister, and they're weakened the court system, and they're weakened the journalists, free speech. Anyway, it's a long discussion, but it's just in Israel. But of course, it's the same in Poland, Hungary, Turkey, the US, Brazil. I mean, the whole world is just spiraling into...
When you look back at the last 30, 40, 50 years, let's say, it seems to me that I feel like we should be a little farther ahead politically, relationally?
No, we're going backwards. Yes, you would imagine that it would go further, would it we progress, but no, unfortunately not. And I keep thinking about, just think about 21st century technology plus somebody like Hitler. Just think about it for, 10 seconds. And we are lucky with Trump, that Trump is just somebody who was, accidentally ended up there, but he's not a very bright person. But think if somebody was actually bright and would know how to use his popularity and use everything that Trump is kind of like accidentally did.
Right.
But somebody who's actually with, 160 IQ and with the intention of dismantling the American democracy, it's probably...
Then what?
Yeah, then it's over, it's basically.
Do you think... do you want to be seen as a prophetic voice 20 years from now, 5, 10, 12 years from now? The thread throughout your films will say this and this about where we're at?
Yeah, definitely. I know that I want to continue to make films that are politically important and politically... but there's this thing with politically, because politically that word also... So Anna is political,
sure, and
Ashmina is political, but also... political in the big sense, political of fascism versus social democracies and liberalism. And I think that there is a trend now. It's very fascinating, actually, how the way that filmmaking industry around the world, and especially in Europe, is governed, and the trends in filmmaking and in storytelling and what films are being made, how it's... So I'll give you an example. So for example, now we spoke about it before we started recording, that, there's certain trends in the type of stories that needs to be told.
Sure.
And also...
And you're working on a feature as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is that, so basically now, everywhere, filmmakers are encouraged to tell their own personal story. Right, their own personal story. And a lot of times these personal stories, of course, they're very important and also they're political and important and interesting, and they should be told. But on the other hand, it takes the spotlight from big political stories, not of the individual, but of society as a whole. So we have these magnifying glasses on certain moments, maybe like in Anna and Ashmina too, but there is no, big sweeping films about the whole trend that we're seeing around the world. There isn't a featured drama, scripted drama about their documentaries, but there's no story of how Putin is taking over the world or whatever.
Right. That's going to come in 20 years.
Yeah, or I guess we had a feature film come out about Brexit recently, but
do you think you tell bigger stories through the individual story, through the Annas, through the
Ashminas? Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
You do, but I think there is a place also for the bigger, bigger stories. Yeah.
So I'm going to use the phrase similarity through difference.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that? I haven't seen Ashmina. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. All the things that I'm thinking about and working with in international development as well, as my listeners will know well. Why do we seem to separate? I mean, coming from Israel, you can talk about this, I would think, at great length. Division, separation. It's a good thing I'm not you, and you're not me. And then we build walls, and sometimes literal walls, and we're doing it in the West, and so on. Is that kind of your hope? I mean, would you say, as an international relations student, and now as a filmmaker who wants to tell a political and a relational story, how do we draw a circle around the world, as idealistic as that may sound?
How do we teach people not to
divide.
See the other as...
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that the hegemonic system, I don't think, wants that to happen, because that's the way that that people control each other. I mean, in Israel, I just read a really interesting article about how actually Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, is actually keeping Hamas in Gaza, their political control there, because it's good for him, because then he can rally the Israeli right wing behind him telling to them, look, we have this enemy, we have these people who want to hurt us. So he keeps this conflict on low heat forever.
Right.
So it's exactly like in 1984, in 1984 that he spoke about the perpetual war. You have to keep a perpetual war,
Right.
because then you rally the people behind you,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can and justify your existence, right? So in Israel, maybe the conflict could have been solved many years ago, but it's not in the interest of the Israeli right, because then, they cease to have a reason for, staying in power or even existing. And it's definitely not in the interest of Iran, which is funding Hamas and which is, politicizing the problem of the Palestinian for their own internal reasons. We hate the US, we hate Israel. Look what they're doing to the poor Palestinians. So they keep it on a low-grade conflict.
Right.
And and it's how do we end it? I don't know how you end it. It's personally, through art also. I mean, I remembered, when I was a teenager, and probably the first time that I realized, like, oh, yeah, I'm Israeli and I'm Jewish and I'm supposed to be, on our side.
Right.
If I would have been born 35 kilometers that dear side of the border, I would have been a Palestinian, and I would be sure that this is all ridiculous. This is all notions that 5,000, 10,000 years old. We're really, it's 21st century, but we're living in the Middle Ages in so many ways and in so many aspects.
I've always loved that phrase about the accident of geography. And in philosophy, the question is, why are things this way and not some other way, right? Why wasn't I born in Cambodia? Why wasn't I, right? And it's just, and now, what kind of a responsibility does that put on me? Or is it even a responsibility, or is it more of an ethical sort of obligation?
I just had an idea for a film.
Oh, good.
That's how my mind works.
This will be the 68th film? You're going to go down and scribble
Yeah, because what happens now with all the DNA tests is that people do a DNA test, the 23andMe test and all this, and then they find out that they're not who they thought they were.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
right?
Like
they think, oh, we're half Italian, or 100% Italian, and then you make a DNA test and you find out that you're actually like, a quarter Spanish and half Jewish or something like that. Or people, African Americans who were born and they discovered that they're 25% white or something like that. And that's really interesting how, and actually in real life, there is a really famous story of this Hungarian politician who was in a neo-Nazi party in Hungary, and then they all did DNA tests to prove each other that they're, pure Hungarians. And the guy found out that he's like 100% Jewish, basically.
Oh, wow.
And then he left the party, moved to Israel, became like, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous that he was a neo-Nazi. It's ridiculous that they did a test. It's ridiculous that he moved to Israel. The whole thing is stupid. So, I don't know. I don't think we're going to end it in our lifetime.
No, I don't think so either, but I do hope we're moving in the right direction. I think we are, for sure, in many respects. And films like yours, honestly, they're interesting and entertaining. They're beautiful to look at. And for me, anyway, they're layered enough that they can generate a conversation like this that I would like to continue, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap up. Can you tell us just a little bit about your first feature film and the craziness around trying to get it funded and so on? And when is it going to be done? When are you back to the Toronto International Film Festival?
So actually, I'm already shooting another short film in November.
Okay, good.
And then I might be continuing this series of segments of shorts. They're not shorts; they're segments of a bigger of a feature. I have more scripts than I need, actually. So I might be shooting 3 more of them to have 5.
Nice.
Or I'm going to take one of them and expand it into a feature, which is Adva, which I'm also in discussion about creating a feature out of it, because that was supposed to be the next short that I would shoot, and it tells the story of. It basically shows how a date escalates into a non-consensual sexual situation, and then the girl wakes up in the morning and not understanding, how it happened, and it follows that for that kind of scenario.
So you don't pick really cheery, light topics, right? It's
I don't find them interesting.
No,
the cheery topic.
That's right. No, and it's interesting too to me that still in Anna, even though there is this, even the cinematography sort of has this existential angst-like tone kind of embedded within it, if I can say that. But I don't know. There's still hope there to me. There is. You are pushing back against that cynical edge, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Dekel Berenson, thank you so much for your time today, talking about your beautiful and important new film, Anna, here at the Toronto International Film Festival. I'm really looking forward to your next piece.